There were times I was lost, dark had fear, couldn't see through the rain. In the end it was clear, hit the fan. I was more than one man who was there to lend a hand. Together we'd stand, always had my back, my guardian soldier. Team pulled together, united we conquer. Blessed is he who in the name of charity carry me when I'm weak straight through the valley of darkness. Pitch blackness, the heartless, regardless, fear couldn't part us. Thick and thin, there by my side. At times we collide, but in the end we ride. Thick and thin, there by my side. At times we collide, but in the end we ride. We ride, 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 ride. I am my brother's keeper. Keep on holding strong. United we stand, divided we fall. Together we belong. I am my brother's keeper. Keep on holding strong. United we stand, divided we fall. Together we belong. I am my brother's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. I am my brother's keeper.
And we are live. This is the 2023 ProMX Breakdown Show number 2. I'm your host, Pete Wolf. I'm excited to bring you this one. We're going to be covering all the action that was round 3 of the ProMX Championship in Wodonga, which took place on the 16th of March. We also have 2 awesome riders calling in for this episode. The first is New Zealand MX legend Cody Cooper, who is currently racing the ProMX series in the MX2 class for the Empire Kawasaki team. We'll also be speaking to the reigning MX1 champion, CDR Yamaha's Aaron Tanti, to hear his thoughts about round 3 in Wodonga. Once again, I have Death Grip Products' Travis Coward joining me in the Wolf Den for this episode. Trav came up to Wodonga with me, and it was definitely an experience seeing everything that went down firsthand. Welcome to the studio again, Trav.
Yo, what is up?
Oh, lots is up. Lots is up.
Could say that again. Up in smoke, some things, but
some things are up in smoke. Bikes are up in smoke.
A moment of silence for
all the bikes,
departed bikes.
Yep, that are still stuck in the mud.
Yes, and the riders. I'm sure we'll cover that.
Yeah, they say that some of the riders went home before the racing started. I counted 40 on the gate and 20 at the finish line.
Just a couple trickled across the finish line.
They'll find them next time they rip up the track.
A few bikes too.
That's a bit dark. All right, so let's get into it. I guess the main thing leading up to Wodonga and round 3 was the weather. It was forecast to be rainy about a week out from the event, and then we copped the night before about 36 mil of rain. So it was a mudder. We got up to Albury and everything was underwater. The infield, the pits, the spectator areas, the walking areas, the car park. What were your initial thoughts when we got there, mate?
I was still optimistic the whole morning. I'm like, it's going to clear up. The track's going to dry out. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But it didn't, did it?
No, it stayed rainy till about 11 o'clock, like well after the bikes had hit the track.
Bit of carnage.
Yeah, definitely conditions for carnage.
Even the viewing areas surrounding the tracks were a bit of a challenge.
Yeah,
for pedestrians and their legs.
Yeah, I'd almost think, I know it's probably up to the track and you know resources are limited, but you'd think at an event of that caliber that the spectator areas would have at least some gravel down, but it was kind of a mud pit, and you know there was a bit of mud wrestling. There was definitely spectators around that had hit the deck that were covered in mud. I think even Kate Peck, she hit the deck at one stage.
I don't think it was a good event to be wearing running shoes at.
Yeah, but
majority of people had gumboots on, work boots.
Gumboots and work boots were the order of the day.
Yeah.
So on seeing the track for the first time before the bikes went out there, what did you sort of think? It looked like a rolled in track.
It did. I thought it was sealed the night before, and it looked like the water was running pretty good off the track. So
yeah, there was some standing puddles, but
it's pretty standard.
Yeah, it definitely didn't look ripped before the bikes hit it.
Yeah, it looks like they'd obviously done a bit of track prep the day before.
Yeah,
removing some of the dirt,
or at least the days before. You could see it on TV as well. Like we watched it back later, and there's piles of dirt all around the track that they'd scraped off to try to get the mud off before the event.
You think they're just trying to scrape the slop off?
Yep. Well, there was still plenty of slop there. But I thought it was actually pretty interesting. My initial thoughts were that the track prep was pretty good. When the 85cc class went out and the MX3 and the MX2, it looked like the track was going to hold up pretty good, like when they went out for qualifying and practice in the morning. It looked like there was probably about, 150 mil of slop on the top, but they weren't sort of breaking through.
Yep.
And then the big boys came out on the 450s, and it's like the bottom of the track dropped out. And I've got a little bit of a theory about that.
Do tell.
My personal feeling is that where the track is positioned, it's between the two rivers. And looking at the infield, the pits, there was a lot of standing water. Like the pits looked like a lake. You know, all the cars were parked around one edge, and the rest of it was just underwater. So I think that the ground was super saturated, and that there was a hard base in the track, and that once the 450s hit the track, they actually broke through that base and got into the, where the groundwater is.
Yeah.
And they'd just broken through. And my opinion sort of is that if that is the case, and look, I'm no hydrologist, I'm no geologist, but if that's the case, I really think there's not much that the track preppers could have done to prevent that from happening.
Do you think that's why the track deteriorated, got worse and worse, even after the rain had stopped?
Yeah, I think it was just they just got into where the ground was holding all the water, and there was just no way of preventing that. And especially if you look at the areas of the track that were most heavily affected, they were the two low-lying areas, which you'd expect that to be where the muddiest sections are, except they weren't actually holding water before this happened.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were muddier than anywhere else in advance, but they ended up being complete bog holes.
What were some of the worst parts of the tracks?
Well, there's obviously the corner before the start-finish tabletop. I got some good photos there of bikes literally up to the seat in mud. There was that poor Kawasaki rider. Sorry,
that was a 450, by the way.
Yeah, I could not see his number. I couldn't see it on his back. I couldn't see it on the bike, so I can't tell you who it was.
In that photo, there's another rider coming around in the rut next to him, and you can see like from the fender up.
That's Dean Ferris.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Brown.
But basically there was three people and the rider trying to get that bike out of the mud.
They ended up giving up.
Yeah, it wasn't even moving. Like it wasn't even wobbling or rocking. So it was definitely stuck. So the other thing that stuck out to me once the bikes hit the track, something that you definitely can't appreciate on TV, is the smell.
Don't get me wrong, we love the smell of motocross fuels, but there was a different kind of smell that day, wasn't there?
It smelled like a barbecue where you were burning clutches and valves. Yeah, just generally the smell of motors going.
A lot of smoking oil going on.
Kaput. Yeah, the bikes were smoking. I've never experienced anything like that. I've watched a lot of motocross racing. I've been to a fair few events, and I've never smelt anything like that at an event where the whole race, like every time a bike comes past, you go, whoa.
Is that smoke or is it steam?
Yeah.
you couldn't tell the bikes were overheating. They were smoking.
Yeah, especially for the first lot of motos, and even in the practice in the morning. Yeah, it was just a different experience altogether.
It was pretty hard on those little motors for the 85s anyways.
So speaking of the track conditions, there was a lot of comments about the track conditions. Obviously, Craig Dack gave a pretty interesting interview where he blamed some of the bike failures on the riders not riding to the conditions. Now, Dacker has a lot of experience. It's pretty hard to argue with his viewpoints. He's been in the industry as long as anyone else. Whereas, there was experienced riders like Dean Ferris and Jesse Dobson who were actually blaming the track prep and were very critical of the track prep, not only at Wodonga, but the other tracks this year. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
I personally don't think you can blame one thing or the other. I think it was a compilation of all factors.
Yep.
Yeah, to blame it on track prep I don't think was suitable. These guys race motocross for a living. They've never ridden a mud race before. We all know how hard that can be. So, like to blame one thing or the other, I couldn't pinpoint it. My opinion, I'd say it's a combination. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. And look, 36 mil of rain, I think no matter how you prep the track, it's going to end up being wet and muddy. To what degree? Maybe that could be brought into question. But look, in our last podcast, we were fairly critical of the track prep at Appen.
Yep.
And if you look at the two events, I think they're very different. Appen was dry in the lead up. It was obviously forecast to be hot, but that was more of a human error. Mm-hmm. Whereas this I think, was more of an environmental factor. In both cases, I guess you could argue that the humans tried to prevent against the inevitable. So in one case, they were trying to prevent the track from drying out. At Albury, they were trying to prevent the track from being unrideable.
I think they did all they could.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think it was a very different situation to Appen, though. And in my opinion, they did a pretty good job, given that the hand they were dealt and the conditions that they had to deal with.
Yeah.
Like we sort of just touched on before, the amount of water, standing water around every other part of the venue just was testament to how much rain they'd actually received.
Now, these riders who actually blew their bikes up, do you think they could have done anything to potentially avoid this?
Like one thing that stuck out to me was watching Brodie Connolly when he was riding around. I chuckled to myself when he went past because he looked like a bush rider that goes riding twice a year. He was sort of sitting on the bike, a bit like a bag of spuds, and he went past. He didn't look like, pro riders have got a style and an edge when they ride that stands out, and he just looked like he was putting past, and he was just like, bop, 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 bop. Like he wasn't trying to go fast. He was just trying to ride in a straight line, keep that forward momentum happening. And then you saw other riders that were trying to ride the track and go fast. Perfect example is Regan Duffy. Like he actually looked like he was going fast out there. He had legs hanging off everywhere. There was
no style going on that day.
No, but he was going fast.
Yeah.
I actually thought that he was going to qualify a lot higher than he did, but there was obviously parts of the track where he was tipping over that we didn't see. But every time we saw him go past, we were like
flying.
we were like, he looks fantastic. Yep. So back to your point, could the riders have done anything different? Maybe. But like you said, I don't think it was one factor that caused the bike failures. And I think they were all out there trying. They're all pro riders. We've seen them ride when the conditions are perfect, and they know how to ride a motorcycle. And they know how to ride a motorcycle in the mud too.
Yeah.
I just think that level of mud and that depth of mud, I think it's going to be testing for everyone.
Would you even agree with that in Dean Ferris's case, where his bike was visibly smoking for laps and he still pushed and inevitably blew up his bike and lost points?
Yeah. Do you know what happened though?
No, I don't.
On one of his falls, his oil filler cap came off. So basically, he blew all the oil out of his bike. So that was, unfortunately, motorcycles don't run without oil.
Wouldn't you think he'd stop at the pits?
He didn't realise.
The smoke?
But they didn't realise what the cause was until afterwards.
The fact.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He did say that he could hear the bike starting to rattle underneath him. And yeah.
The death rattle.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. That's actually a testament to the Yamaha that it can go.
He was still flying though, even like those
It went
laps.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And that oil cap, I would say, was probably missing for the majority of that time, and the bike kept going. So
he was catching guys.
Yep.
He ended up blowing his bike up on the last lap.
Yeah. If your bike lasts 20 minutes without oil in it when it's being ridden like that, I think that's actually a pretty good
good sales point for Yamaha.
Sales pitch. Yeah. So we don't advocate for riding bikes without oil, but if you're going to ride a bike without oil, ride a Yamaha.
Like Dean Ferris, without oil.
So I've got a question for you, Trav. Something that come up, it's not my idea, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. So one of the suggestions that came up following Wodonga was that ProMX engage a dedicated track prep specialist for the ProMX. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it'd be a good idea. Obviously, Albury circumstances, there's nothing that could have been done different.
Yep.
Aside for maybe more drainage or whatever, but
sealing the track a little bit earlier, maybe.
I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah,
probably maintain a little bit more consistency over the tracks.
I think it would introduce a level of accountability as well. And I think there's a lot of knowledge out there. There is definitely people that know what they're talking about when it comes to track prep.
Yeah.
Especially ones that have been in earth moving and track building for their entire lives. So it doesn't rely on volunteers at the track making these decisions. And I think their own experience would grow and build as time went on. There were suggestions that ProMX bring in a whole track crew to prep each of the tracks. But I think that in itself is a little bit flawed. The cost would be phenomenal trying to get machines to each event and a track crew. And, I don't think the series could afford that sort of cost. But a consultant, I think, would be a fantastic idea.
Definitely.
And they could then work with the people that run the track, who also
The
have
locals that know the track, know the drainage, where all the water sits, high spots, low spots.
Yep, exactly. But then that consultant could basically make that decision, which is one of the things that came up at Wodonga about when the track was sealed.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the criticism was that it wasn't sealed early enough.
Mm-hmm.
But then it would be up to that one person. And again, they're going to be accountable. And, if they're not good at their job, they won't last there long, and someone else will replace it, and you'll eventually get someone that's good at it. And at the end of the day, someone would be accountable for those decisions. They could learn to grow throughout each series and each year.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at the moment, they make the mistake at one track, but how can you fix that at the next track when you've got a whole different series of people that haven't had that previous experience?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
You could potentially be making the same mistake track-wise through the whole season.
Yeah,
because you've got different people doing the same mistakes. No one's communicating. No one's on the same page.
But it's effectively a new mistake each time.
Yep.
So some of the other criticism that was coming from riders about the track was that ProMX should have made the call to cancel the event. Now I've got some thoughts on this. I've thought about it a lot. I wouldn't ride in those conditions, but ultimately I don't think it's up to the organisers to make that call. I mean, they've invested a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort into the event, and a lot of people have come from far and wide to attend the event. So when you get to a race like Albury-Wodonga, and the track is like Albury-Wodonga, if you want to make a change, it's got to be up to the riders. And I think the riders that actually made the decision to race, that takes a lot of courage. And there were riders that didn't race, that pulled out, and I think that takes a lot of courage too. But I don't think that the ProMX organisers or the management or anything is going to change unless the riders take a stance.
100% agree with that.
Yeah,
I heard similar things about they should have cancelled. They knew the rain was coming. I don't think it's simple as it's raining. The track's horrible. Let's cancel it. It's being televised. Like you said, there's so much behind it, so much planning involved. People coming from all across the country. At the end of the day, they're there to race motocross. It's up to the rider if they want to race in those conditions or not.
Yep, and I think it's almost a case of natural attrition. So ProMX don't want to host an event where there's only 20 riders on the line. Mm-hmm. They can't do that. That's unsustainable. It's not interesting to watch. Now, if they get to an event and 20 riders pull out, what do you think will happen at the next event with regards to track prep?
They'll probably do a better job, won't they?
And ProMX will make them do a better job.
Interesting point.
There'll be an incentive there.
Yeah.
And if that happens at 2 or 3 events, it's going to force change.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to do something.
That's an interesting point.
They're going to have to do something because they can't host events if riders don't turn up.
They got a lot of bad publicity, obviously, from a lot of riders and stuff about the track conditions.
Yeah,
not just in the weather itself, but track prep. They're trying to blame people, but
yeah. And my point is, I actually don't think it's at this stage the ProMX organisers' responsibility to drive that change. I think it's completely up to the riders and the teams. Of course, in the short term, you may be losing points in a championship race if you decide to pull out, but you've almost got to be at the point where you put your money where your mouth is. Mm-hmm. If you're a privateer and you're worried about your bike blowing up, well, you've got to take that punt. Do I compete and earn X amount of points at the risk of blowing up my bike? Or do I pull out and make sure I've got a working bike and a working body for the next event?
Yeah.
And the same goes for the factory teams. Obviously, they're not going to be pulling out, but they can be very vocal and they can drive change.
Be interesting to see what happens track prep-wise for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think Wodonga was a bit of a catalyst that may instigate a little bit of change because there were riders that did pull out of the event. So if that happens again, and I certainly think if we see another round that is like an Appen or like a Wodonga, especially if it's consecutive and the riders haven't had a break, it's going to start moving in that direction.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I wanted to bring up was after the event, once I got back, chatting with riding buddies, there was a bit of talk that the event wasn't so great to watch on TV. I thought it was an amazing event in person. I had a great time there. It was raining. The weather was miserable. We were slipping and sliding all over the mud. But watching those riders get around that track, it was nothing short of awe-inspiring for me.
That brings up a point. On our last podcast, we're talking about how rough Appin was, and I was asking if a rough track makes for better racing.
Yeah.
I think I answered my own questions because the track was rough. I thought it made for good racing. Very entertaining to watch.
I would say, yeah, it was entertaining to watch. I don't know about the racing side. If you look at racing as in competitors going head-to-head and a close battle.
Yeah.
It was a case of...
It was a race to the finish line.
Yeah. It was a race for survival.
Yep.
Whoever crashed the least went the fastest.
That's it. Who stayed upright.
Yeah.
But, I agree. It was way better in person than it was on TV. I don't think TV captured how severe the track was.
Yeah, definitely. I got to go out on the track and take some photos and, so I saw it up close and personal, and I saw how deep the ruts were and how deep the mud was, and it just blew me away. And there was a couple of sections where the ruts were, 20, 30 metres long, and they were probably about 50 centimetres deep, but they weren't straight. They were up and down and zigzagging from side to side. And watching the pack of riders come through one after another and navigate these ruts, like just the amount of balance that it took, it was a perfect case for how these riders are 10 levels above, not one level above, but 10 levels above your average, amateur rider and amateur racer.
They're on a different level.
Completely.
Do you think the televised race wasn't as good because the conditions were so bad? There was so much going on the track. It was hard to capture how much action was really going on the track.
Yeah, definitely. There's an element of that. But saying that, I thought this was the best telecast of a ProMX event that I've seen. I think they did a much better job than in the past, capturing different areas of the track, covering more than just your top 5 star riders. I really liked the fact that the commentators were naming a lot of the privateer riders. Maybe they listened to our last podcast and
possibly, hopefully,
took our feedback on board. But I actually really enjoyed the telecast, and maybe it's because we had been there and seen it firsthand, and then I could still appreciate it looking at the TV.
While you were dry, warm, sitting on your couch.
Exactly, but on TV, it looked like a completely different track to when we were there in person.
Yeah,
and it looked a lot drier on TV.
It
did you get that as well?
Yeah, almost looked like a loamy soil, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
mud.
I know. By the end of the day, that there was definitely sections on the track that were dry, like walking around, where the riders, the main lines, they were dry. I won't go as far as saying they were dusty, but they were hard pack, so it wasn't slop anymore. Which, the track changed in the morning from slop to hard pack ruts.
That just would have made conditions worse, wouldn't it? If you've got sections of slop and then you've got hard pack ruts as well.
And again, it goes down to, like I said, it was awe-inspiring watching the riders get around that track. And yes, it may not be the greatest track for racing. It may not be what the riders want. It may result in the bikes blowing up. But it was a damn good experience seeing riders get around that. And I don't think I would have got 20 meters on that track. I'm honest, I'm not even exaggerating. It was just completely above and beyond anything that I could do. And we even commented on the day, some of the top pro riders looked like absolute amateurs. They would go 3 meters, feet hanging off, tip over, pick their bikes up, go another 3 meters, tip over. We're not going to name names, obviously, but
3 times in one corner.
Yep. But these are riders that, would normally, you'd look at any other race on a weekend, on your average weekend, say they went to one of your local races.
Would be flying.
Yeah, and winning everything they entered hands down. So
it separated the field for sure.
Yeah, if nothing else, it definitely made me appreciate what these riders are capable of.
Absolutely.
So we touched on it in the last podcast a little bit, the Kiwi invasion. Well, we had 2 more come over this time. Hayden Smith and Maximus Purvis, who of course joined Cody Cooper, Brodie Connolly and Hamish Hardwood.
Where are these guys coming from?
They're coming out of the woodwork, that's for sure.
They are.
Yeah, it must be a long, cold winter over in New Zealand. They're coming over to race our tracks.
Well, They're doing pretty well for himself.
They are. They're definitely doing well.
What do you think about him?
Well, for a start, let's talk about Maximus Purvis's name. I might get him on the podcast one day, but I just have to say that's the sort of name that my wife would call me if I walked in on her in the shower. Yep. I don't know what his parents were thinking.
Maximus Purvis. The gladiator.
I can't say it without laughing. And Hayden Smith racing the 250 class on a two-stroke. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Legend.
Yeah. Yep, that is, don't see much of that these days.
No, it's good to see him.
Yep.
The two bangers out on the track.
Yep, Davey Motorsports KTM. And, of course, our guest we will be speaking to a little bit later in the show, Cody Cooper, Brodie Connolly, and, Hamish Harwood, who are both kicking butt in their respective classes in the championship.
What an impressive ride by Brodie.
Yeah, we'll get to that a bit later, but he's definitely laying it down. And we'll talk about each of the individual classes a bit later too. We won't go into it in too much depth, but I just wanted to mention at this point the 85cc guys. It was the first event to host the 85cc class. They cancelled practice in the morning to make the track manageable for the 85cc guys when they went out. So they got to cop the early morning slop in all its glory. What did you think of the 85cc guys?
I think they, well, first off, I think the organisers timed it pretty well.
Yep.
Because the 85 seemed to manage to get around somewhat decent for when they went out.
Most of them.
Most of them. But, good on them.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of an example of the level of talent that we've got coming up. It's
the future races.
Yep. Some of them took those conditions that experienced pro riders struggled in their stride, and a few of them absolutely...
You did pretty well out there on your 85, didn't you?
I wish that was me.
Was it just happened to be another Pete Wolf?
And of course, he ripped.
He did.
It comes with the name.
Yeah. It's in
No.
the blood.
No, that was good watching the 85cc guys get around. Of course, they only did one race because after the other bikes got out there, like we touched on earlier, the track it went away. It went to pieces. It went too deep. We're losing 250s and 450s out there.
If 450s are getting stuck on the track,
Yep.
there's no hope for the little 85s.
No.
Or the 85 riders.
No, that would have got lost out there.
Good call.
Yeah, so I think they're actually racing at the next 85cc event. They're going to be doing another race out there to make up for it.
Oh, at Maitland?
Yep. So that'll be the next round. So they'll get their chance.
Redemption.
Yep. Noah James for the win.
Did Noah get the whole shot?
Yeah, he got the whole shot. He was leading.
It was a bit hard to see, like everyone was covered in mud. But
Yep. Well, we were debating, I think it was between the first rider in first and rider in third about which one was Noah.
Yeah.
And the other one happened to be Peter Wolf.
There you go. Wolfie.
That's it. All right, I think that's enough chat about the event in general. Before we get on to our guests and talking about the races in detail, let's cut to a word on behalf of our sponsors. If you like lightweight motocross gloves that maximise feel, check out Death Grip gloves. Right now, Death Grip are offering Mental4Moto listeners a whopping 35% off their Reaper motocross gloves. Just head over to www.deathgrip.store or click on the link below and use the discount code MENTAL23. It's a limited offer, so make sure you place your order today. Do you need a fire extinguisher for your workshop, van or business? Servicing the Greater Melbourne area, Wolf Building Compliance offers a comprehensive range of fire protection sales, maintenance and reporting services. Use the contact form at www.wolfbc.net. Mention Mental4Moto and the guys at Wolf will be sure to look after you. After a new pair of motocross goggles? Works Racing goggles have all the features of a high-end roll-off system at a fraction of the price. The wet weather will soon be upon us once again, and if you're in the market for a new set of goggles, I highly recommend you give these a go. To place your order, simply click on the link below. Our first guest today, Cody Cooper, is an absolute legend of motocross. He's had a career most riders could only dream about. Way back in 2004, he won the Australian MX2 Championship. Since then, Cody has represented New Zealand at the MX of Nations numerous times and alongside Ben Townley, helped his team achieve a podium at that event back in 2006. He's done multiple stints racing the MX1 class in the US AMA Motocross Championship, achieving several race and overall top threes, and during his time in the US, has shared the podium with legends such as James Stewart. As well as James Stewart, Cody is also lined up against a bunch of other all-timers like Chad Reed, Ken Roxon, Ryan Villapoto, Eli Tomac, Ryan Dungey, and countless others. And in his home country of New Zealand, over a 9-year stint, Cooper won 7 New Zealand MX1 championships, including an unbelievable 5 MX1 championships in a row between 2013 and 2017. Earlier this year, he won the 2023 New Zealand MX2 championship at the age of 39. Welcome to the podcast, Cody.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on.
You've had a pretty amazing career, and I definitely have some questions for you about that. But let's start with the ProMX Championship this year. You've done the first 3 rounds. How have you found it to be so far?
Yeah, it's been good. I'm enjoying being back over there and racing and stuff. But, I think it'd been 10 years since I'd raced there and, had to some of the series. And no, it's different because of just the scenarios of each round have been a little bit, with the crash at the start, at the first round, and then the heat at the second round in Appen, and then the mud at Albury. So, yeah, some different conditions, that's for sure.
No, definitely. It's pretty amazing the synchronicity of life sometimes. I had Steve Powell on the podcast, and he spoke about you racing for the factory Honda team whilst he was working there as a mechanic back in the early 2000s. And then a couple of weeks later, I found out you were coming over to replace the injured Jai Constantino, who I've previously had on the podcast as well, racing for Empire Kawasaki in the MX2 class. Did they reach out to you? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of was interested in riding over there, and then talking to Jed Parsons.
Yep.
And it just sort of came around like that. I initially was like going to see if they wanted a 450 rider, but it ended up, with the injury with Jai, and then me going on the 250, and I'd raced New Zealand Nationals here on a 250 as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it sort of worked out all right, and managed to slip into that spot.
Good stuff. Hey, Cody, you race at Kawasaki over in New Zealand as well. Has it been easy to adjust, and is there many differences in the bike setup from a New Zealand bike, basically, compared to a ProMX one over here?
Not too much, as I was pretty much on a standard bike in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I was even racing on standard suspension for a little bit, and then I decided to beef it up a little bit and get a little bit stiffer, but not much more. Just it was more for fun, over here. And over there, they've obviously done a lot more to the engine, and it's just my same suspension, maybe a little bit stiffer again. No, it's been good. I think with a 250, I could just ride anything that got more power. More power on a 250 is better. Than standard, that's for sure.
Looking back over your career, it looks like much of your success has come racing the big bikes in the MX1 class. So what actually prompted your return to racing MX2 at this stage of your career?
I actually got on like previous brands. Like when I was riding on them, I'd go from a 250, trying it to a 450, just on a day's ride, like on a fun day. And it was quite a big difference. And I, never wanted to do it, just because of the massive difference. But now on a Kawasaki, that 23 KX 250 has actually got a bit of power. That was like getting off my 450 and now on 250, and I was surprised how good it was. So I ended up somehow racing that. I actually did double class in New Zealand, did both of them. So that was a bit of a challenge in itself, but it was good fun, good challenge. And and then, like I said, that Australian deal sort of came up out of the blue as well, and then and hadn't been on race one for a long time, so it was good fun to do that.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference over the 250s and the 450s?
Yeah, I do. I like the 250 probably more, just more fun to ride it.
Yep.
But my starts are terrible on it. It's like you get a start every time, or figure out how to get at least top 5 every time. I'd rather ride the 250. I don't know, at that mud race, I think I would have, at Albury, I think I would have rather the 450. Just in the ruts or in the mud, it's just easier to keep your balance and not dab your foot as much, I feel.
I think you probably would have preferred a jet ski at Albury, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Or a monster truck or something.
I don't know, something
Anything but a dirt bike on that day.
Yeah, like a sand tire or a big pedal for the dunes or something.
So how do you think the caliber of rider and competition currently racing in the ProMX Championship compares to the previous years you've raced in Australia or even abroad?
I think there's a lot further down the field that are fast, you know, the depth of it is a lot more. And the speed is, unreal as well. It's hard to, I am getting older and some things I'm not like committing to as I used to. And so getting a bit slower as well, you know. But I think the worries are not really, it doesn't worry me too much that I'll be 4 seconds off a lap time in practice or something in New Zealand. Like that's sometimes what it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the race I could be battling for a win or something, you know, just sort of get a bit older and you guys know. Nothing sort of worries you.
It becomes a bit more about self-preservation on the track.
Yeah. And it's what it is in the end. If you can't do any better, you can't do any better.
Yeah,
so,
that's it. You try again the next weekend.
Yeah, and that might be your weekend, you know. You might be quicker than the next. So
yeah. The track conditions and track prep during the ProMX this year have been a bit contentious with a bunch of opposing viewpoints. You've been racing for such a long time. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the tracks we've already seen over the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, for Wodonga, that would have been a pretty good track, I'd say. It was almost, I don't think I've ever rode a track like that was prepped that deep. Like it was sort of too good. It was prepped too good, you know?
Yeah.
Like it was, I just can't, it didn't even rain and it was just crazy how much water they had in it and how deep it was. And even in our first moto, you'd be riding on the left side of the track or the right, and it wasn't even dry yet.
Yeah.
So, it was a 450. I would have rather it maybe, just because I'm a little bit heavier, and then on 250, it's just so hard to come out of the corners, and like it just really, I just find it harder on the 250 when the tracks are really loamy.
Yeah. That definitely makes your bike work. That track. It's that's about 3 minutes from our studio here, so it's it's our local.
Yeah, but they did a good job, I feel. Like maybe too good. It could have been a little bit drier, I feel.
Yeah.
You know, first moto could be where you're riding the whole track, maybe, would be ideal. Appen, it's a hard one. They were expecting, you know, a really hot day in the afternoon and throughout the day. And there were some spots like that were really muddy. You couldn't go in the middle all day, but then there were some spots that were really dry. But obviously it's the heat and stuff like that. But and then obviously Albury, they couldn't do anything about that.
Yeah, torrential downpour.
It was a bit too wet. Yeah, I think they left the sprinklers on a bit too long, maybe.
Well, that's what they said about Appen, so.
Or maybe they did that there too.
At 39 years old, mate, you're just saying that your racing's kicked back a little bit. What keeps you coming back about motocross?
Yeah, I am pretty old for what we do. I don't know. It just keeps...
Just a love of the sport?
It's on my mind, just love it.
Yeah.
I think I love it more now than I had, done earlier on. Maybe took it for granted a little bit, or just, it is hard to give up, especially I'm like, want to do all these overseas races because I just think to myself, I won't be able to do it for much longer, but then that's what I've been saying my whole life.
Right.
So, I just love it heaps, having more fun with it, no expectations, and just go out and ride as hard as I can. And some tracks are a bit sketchy. The older age sort of hinders me a little bit, maybe with committing to some parts on the track.
Yep.
Where I have to sort of make it up somewhere else in the corners or something like that, which is a bit hard. But yeah.
Well, that leads me to the obvious question. Where did it all start, and how'd you actually get into motocross?
My dad got me a bike when I was about 2, and I couldn't touch the ground, so Mum made him sell that. And then 4 years old come around, and then he got me another one, and before you know it, I was stuck in a fence for the first ride. And then my brother had the same thing. He crashed into the garage door, I think, and it all started from there, really. And had my first race when I was 6. And I remember that one too. We had to cross a drain 2 times. It was on a JR50.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like a motocross or mini track that went across a drain, so probably New Zealand speak. carried on till about 13, and then my dad died when I was 13, and then I felt like I needed to give up, and then I thought I was giving up, from there and never going back really. And then a mate sort of contacted me from down the line, and then now Honda gave me CR125 to go and do a race down there, and I ended up winning all my races. And then Honda started offering me a deal, and then I ended up, that was in juniors, and then I ended up riding for them for a long time, and then I think I went professional. That was like 16 when I went back racing, and then at 17 they started paying me, or I started doing it professionally from there. And the guy that it was his bike that they gave me, his dad worked for Honda in New Zealand, and now he's one of my best mates now. So he lives up here where I live. He mechanicked me like a few places all around the world and travelled with me, and we were just travelling in a van with no money around the sort of New Zealand at the start, and just loving it, going racing.
Privateer life.
Yeah.
Looking back, you've raced pro motocross in Australia. You've done stints racing the AMA motocross in the USA. You've obviously raced all around New Zealand. What would you consider to be the greatest achievement of your career?
I guess there's a couple. Like my Australian title would be up there, and fifth in the outdoors in America. Would be one there. Just a couple of cool events that I really remember. These nations when Josh, Ben and I got third overall. Yeah, that's a big one. Just the memories is some of the ones that are pretty cool.
Oh, awesome.
I understand you do a little bit of coaching on the side there, Cody. What aspects of the coaching do you hope to pass on to future riders?
When I coach, you mean? Or
yeah. Other than basic riding, hold the handlebars, don't crash, stay on the bike, things. What other advice are you trying to give future riders?
I guess make sure it's always fun. That's the main thing, I think, because that was why I gave up when I was 13. It just wasn't fun anymore. Now that I've got back into it, and when I get older, I'm just having more and more fun with it. It's actually really enjoyable. Try and teach them how I feel with, like, you can only do as good as you can do, so don't beat yourself up, I guess.
Yeah.
As long as you leave the track knowing you tried as hard as you can.
It's very good advice.
There's always, if you keep it upright, there's always next time. So especially for kids, so much focus gets put on the results when they're young, and really the results when they're young don't really matter. Like you said, as long as they're loving it and they keep coming back, the results will eventually come.
And make sure the parents aren't too on their back, otherwise they will give up.
Yeah.
Because I felt like maybe my dad was a little bit like that. So just those sort of things, I guess.
No, well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Not to put you on the spot, but maybe when you have a bit more time, I'd love to do a long form podcast with you. I could even try get Steve Powell back in the studio to co-host if you'd be keen.
Yeah, definitely. He's a good bugger.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he went over to New Zealand a couple of months ago with, he was meant to race with Darryl Hurley, but they got rained out.
Yeah. That was down Woodville. That was actually the event where I got that bike and raced.
Oh, yeah.
That same race. Yeah, but it's by a river and it's been flooded a few times, I think, there.
Oh, the photos
crazy how fast that river came up.
Yeah, the photos he showed me looked incredible. Even the airport, like the water was up to the seats. It was just it was next level. Yeah,
that was a chaos that rainfall for sure.
Thanks so much for coming on, and hopefully I'll speak to you again soon in the future.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for the call. And
yeah, it was real pleasure to get you on the podcast. And like we're both vet riders, so just your viewpoints. It's nice to actually hear like a pro rider that's been around the traps and has a bit more of a mature viewpoint.
Awesome.
I think a lot of people can resonate with the fact of when the pressure's not on, the racing and riding becomes a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's why I think I've gone so long. So,
yeah.
Hopefully I can go do some vet stuff now, because I should have been doing it a long time ago. But yeah, I might get into a bit of that maybe. And
that's the way.
The thing in Glen Helen and stuff. We'll see.
No, that's definitely on my bucket list. I was hoping to maybe do 2025, but I've got to do a bit of work between now and then to get to a level where
so you got a bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah, you keep racing the Pro MX races though. We don't want any more fast ex-pro guys in the racing the vet classes.
No, all right, sounds good.
Too easy. Thanks heaps. Cheers.
Sweet as. Yeah, thanks for the podcast. Appreciate it. Eh? See you later.
See ya. Wow, that was a really cool interview, and Cody definitely has a bit of a different perspective to some of the younger riders today. What do you think about that interview, Trav?
Yeah, I thought it was good hearing a different perspective from a older, can't really say vet rider because he hasn't raced the vets yet, but just his perspective on racing and saying he's enjoying it a lot more these days without the pressure and stuff like that, which
a more mature experience.
Yeah,
rider.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of younger riders could definitely learn a lot from Cody and his approach to racing.
Yeah.
When you look back at your whole career and not placing too much importance in single moments, but the career as a whole, like if you're a younger rider and thinking that you've got that whole career ahead of you and taking that same approach like that and not riding the highs and the lows and placing all the emphasis on a single point in time.
Well, even if you just look at the small scale thing about riding in general out in the track, like when you're less pressure and you're more relaxed, you tend to ride a lot better anyways.
Yeah, that's a damn good point. All right, well, we'll move on to our next guest tonight. Riding for the Craig Dack Racing Yamaha team is Aaron Tanti. Tanti is the reigning ProMX MX1 champion. He also finished third in the 2022 Australian Supercross Championship in the MX1 class and fourth overall at the inaugural World Supercross Championship racing in the MX2 class, narrowly missing out on the podium by just 5 points. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the show, mate.
Hey, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
No, our pleasure, our pleasure. I've got my co-host in studio at the moment, Trav Coward.
G'day, Aaron. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, mate.
Your year so far seems to have been a bit of a roller coaster ride. You're the reigning MX1 champion, and you came into Albury Wodonga as the dual red plate holder with Dean Ferris. But like a lot of riders, including Ferris, you suffered some adversity in the conditions there. Give us some of your thoughts on round 3.
Yeah. Like you said, it's been a bit of a roller coaster start of the year. You know, with all the stuff that went down at round 1, and then getting our first races at round 2, and leaving there with the win and. Yeah, heading into round 3, nice and confident, but unfortunately they had a lot of rain leading into it, and the conditions were brutal. It wasn't fun at all, and unfortunately had a bike malfunction with a lap and a half to go. So definitely a tough pill to swallow. I know a lot of people did, but I lost a lot of points out of there. I dropped back to 6th, and somewhat, I think I'm like 28 points out of the lead, but, only like 12 points out of second place still. So, very achievable to get straight back up there after Maitland. The lead's going to be a bit of a claw, but, we're confident in it. We've got some good tracks coming up, and, I went 1-1 at Maitland last year, so we're looking to do that again.
It's like you've read our questions, mate. You answered about 3 of them in one go.
All right, let's wrap it up. No, just kidding.
Must be getting better at it.
You definitely got the hang of it. There's been a lot of opposing viewpoints about the track prep this year in the Pro MX, not just Albury, but Appin and even Wonthaggi as well. What's your thoughts and how have you found the track so far?
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. It's to me, compared to other years, it's kind of been a pretty kind of low standard, I would say, compared to other years. I know they're trying super hard and stuff, but it just hasn't really been, probably what us racers are looking for to, be more of a racy track where we can, have more battles and stuff like that, rather than, the guys ripping the track as deep as they can and then watering it to as much as they can, and then it ends up being, everyone's searching for the one line on the edge of the track because the middle of the track's sloppy. And it makes it really hard to race on, and it just becomes a little bit more technical, which is no one likes watching that.
No, so it's not great for the riders or the spectators.
Yeah. Then that's what it's all about. Like, I'm sure most motocross fans watch all the disciplines from MXGP to AMA and stuff like that, and you look at them tracks and you see how many lines they can take and still race and go in, out, and kind of like even, and then you get to ours and you're like, oh, there's the one fast line. You go out of it and you're in trouble.
Yeah. In response to the number of bike failures and DNFs at Wodonga, your team boss, Craig Dack, was pretty vocal in talking to the media about the importance of riding to the conditions, especially when the tracks are so deep and muddy. A lot of the riders have spoken out about it as well. What have you taken away from Wodonga with regard to all of that, and have you learned anything from the experience that might help you moving forward?
Yeah, look, taken away from Wodonga, I definitely read what Craig said, a little bit harsh, but coming away from Wodonga, definitely learned. I sort of put myself on the back foot from the qualifying. I just didn't get a good lap in, and it was P18 or something like that. I've never really started that far back, so
yeah.
My starts were good. I was just really far out, and I was doing what I had to do. I probably had a few crashes, as like everyone did in the first race, but I didn't feel like I honestly felt like I was just rolling around out there, and I was in fourth and just minding my own business. And unfortunately, I guess that wasn't enough for my bike to make it. But new model bike, and obviously no one's really tested it in conditions like that. So going back to that, the team's all over on the parts and stuff that need to be probably changed in conditions like that for the next time.
Yeah.
To give it more durability and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't the only one, so I think there's definitely a bit of weight to what you're saying. And I think when four of the the contenders all suffered bike issues in that first moto, it's not great for the championship.
Yeah, that's right. Essentially that was our second round of racing, and like you said, you had four top contenders have a DNF. Like that's 25 points just off the table gone. And the championship sort of spread out from the second round, which is it's a little bit annoying and tough, but we'll put our head down and do what we can do best and try and claw back and keep that number one.
I've always loved your riding style. In the past, I feel it's not been too dissimilar to like Jason Anderson's style. You were a little fast and loose and really in the moment, especially when you found your flow. Wodonga wasn't a great example, but at Appin in particular, you seem to be riding with a lot more patience and precision than we've seen in the past. Is that something you'd agree with? And is it something that you've actively been working on? Yeah,
a lot of people have been saying that now, that I look really smooth and stuff on the bike. It's definitely something I've worked on going into them conditions, like especially like Appin with the deep ruts and stuff. But just in general, riding the 450, it's a wild beast. And you can't really hang it out too much, otherwise it'll bite you pretty hard. But it's definitely something I've worked on, and keep on working forward just to be as smooth as I can. But then I still am able to hang it out when I need to, when the track allows for it and stuff like that.
That's nice to have up your sleeve.
Yeah. I don't think I'm ever going to lose, the raw speed and being able to hang out a bike, super comfy with the bike stepping out and bringing it back. So it's always good to have up your sleeve, like you said, when you get to like some, more of the more edgier tracks that don't have as many ruts, like that might be a little bit loamy and you're dancing around, definitely comfortable there.
Well, we're heading into some hard packed tracks, so I think there's a good chance you'll go on a tear like you did last year.
Yeah, well, that's we got 3 races at Maitland, so it was my number one track last year, and I've got my sights set to claw back as many points as I can, so this is a good starting point.
Nice. So putting the Pro MX Championship aside for a minute, you did extremely well in the pilot season of the WSX last year, narrowly missing out on top 3 overall finish in the championship. Is CDR be entering the team this year, and are you looking to do any of the World Supercross rounds again? Yeah,
look, I'm definitely 100% keen to do World Supercross again. I'm just waiting, kind of a waiting game. Obviously, CDR hasn't confirmed if they're doing it yet, but if they are, I'm definitely going to be involved with it, and I'd love to give it another crack, especially with the more rounds. I love the 2 rounds, but it was super fun, intense racing, and against some wicked dudes, and the crowds are awesome in the different countries, obviously.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate that the WSX series this year kicks off before the Pro MX Championship is finished. So if you wanted to do both, you'd potentially have to race motocross and supercross on alternating weekends. Is that even possible to switch between the two whilst still being safe and competitive, or realistically, would you have to focus on one or the other?
No, I guess it depends on the type of rider you are. Like, last year I rode the 250 on World Supercross, and I rode the 450 in Australian Supercross. I had to back them Melbourne, and I was comfortable doing that. So I'm can definitely float around and do them sort of things and involve it in my program where I can ride some Supercross and then get back on the motocross bike and go as well.
Finally, I wanted to ask about your recent tests you did for the new Yamaha e-bike. Can you tell us a bit about that and what it was like?
Yeah, I had an awesome time. The new Yamaha e-bike's obviously getting released. I think it drops in May, so this next coming month. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on one myself. I absolutely had a ball. We had a few of the riders go down and, we're blazing around the trails and even the BMX track and stuff like that. And yeah, it was... Honestly, I was super impressed. There was nothing that I could fault about it, and not just saying that, but I'm honestly super keen to get my hands on it. I think I'm getting one after Maitland, and going to tear around the trails up here in Queensland with a few of the guys. So that'll be cool.
Nice. That's fantastic. Have you ridden e-bikes before?
To be honest, I've only rode them just around on the flat. I haven't actually trail rided on an e-bike before the Yamaha launch. I've just rode a few different brands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so they all do different things the way that the motor works. But it was really cool with going through all the modes and stuff on the Yamaha one. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's a different level of tech these days.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Yamaha's doing well because they're using their own engine and they've got their own mapping as such. So, even though other bikes might use the Yamaha engine, they don't have what you would say, maybe the ECU or whatever, the mapping that they use.
Yeah.
So they've kept that uptight, which is really cool.
Thanks heaps for your time. We'll let you get back to your dinner. Thanks for coming on the show, and hopefully we can get you back again in future. Good luck with the Queensland titles this weekend too, and and the rest of the ProMX Championship.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that.
I think we'll probably head out to Gilman, so if I see you floating around, I'll come say good day.
Yeah, sweet. Sounds good.
Cool. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. Bye.
There's been so many different viewpoints about round 3, the track, the bike failures, and Aaron just gave us yet another interesting point as well about the Yamahas being fairly new in their development and the R&D. What do you think about that, Trav?
Not sure how I feel about that. The engines haven't changed that drastically over the last few years. Do you think it could be the bikes, or could it be rider over-revving, over-clutching, overriding the conditions?
I actually think, to be brutally honest, I've sort of gone full circle in this. When I heard Dean Ferris, give his points, I was like, yeah, that's right. And then I read Craig Dack's interview, and I'm like, yeah, actually, riders have to ride the conditions, and look, there was riders out there whose bikes didn't blow up. But then, you listen to what Tanti said about the bikes being in their first year of development. It's a new model. But at the same time, Cole Webster's bike failed. Nathan Crawford's bike failed. They're Hondas and KTMs. At the end of the day, I think it was just the conditions and the weather and the effort that, the bikes have to go through to be competitive in those conditions.
So it's potentially all factors coming
exactly,
into play.
coming together.
So you can't really pinpoint one or the other.
I don't think so.
Definitely the conditions are to blame, for sure, though.
Okay, it's time to talk racing.
Race time.
Let's start with the MX1 class. Well, my predictions got off nearly to a fine start. Cole Webster, 56-second lead halfway through the moto.
He was gone.
He was riding a different track, I think.
Yep.
Like a lot of the guys, he was probably going around the outside.
Or everyone just fell over in the first corner.
Don't know, but he was on a different level. How can you get 56 seconds up in that amount of time? I actually looked back at it and I thought at the lap times they were going, he would have lapped up to third place by the end of the moto at the rate he was going.
It was insane how quick he was going in those conditions.
Jed Beaton is the only one he wouldn't have caught.
But that was short-lived, wasn't it?
It was short-lived. A little tip over, and Mr. Webster couldn't get his bike started.
That's right.
So it wasn't just the Yamahas.
That was pretty devastating.
Can you imagine how he must feel in those conditions, putting that sort of effort in, riding so well? There was only a little tip over. He was fine. Went to pick up the bike, and it wouldn't start.
Couldn't find the kickstart.
Needs to get some tips off Kenny. The other rider I want to mention, straight off the bat, Regan Duffy. So we already mentioned him before, but it was great to see Regan out on the track. But I have to say, when I was out on the track taking photos, I had riders zooming past, left, right. They're going everywhere. They're all over the track. They're going very, very fast. Not meaning you're in control. But the only time I feared for my life was when Regan Duffy was coming towards me.
He was coming for you, was he?
Yeah, it was an experience. There was legs hanging off. There was hands coming off. He was like hanging off the left side of his bike and then the right side of his bike.
He was flying himself as well, wasn't
And
he?
the whole time the throttle was just wide open.
He's just holding on for dear life.
Yeah. It was fun to watch.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch, but like every time I'd be standing on a corner taking a photo and he would come up and I hadn't even realized it was him. And I'm like, whoa. And I'd start to take a couple of steps back and then I'm like, it's Duffy again.
Where's the nearest tree to hide behind?
Yeah. Grab one of the other media guys and throw him in front of me. Yeah. Like
use him as a hay bale or something.
Yeah. No, that was pretty funny actually. But it was great to see him out there. He got his first top 10. That's a big step in, especially in those conditions.
Huge.
Yep. And I think we're only going to see him improve.
He was doing well. What ended up happening to him?
So he ended up with 10, 11 moto finishes for an 8th overall.
Still pretty good.
Still bloody good.
How was he coming around that inside corner before the finish line tabletop, standing up the whole time?
Yeah, that's what I mean. He just he looked good enough to win.
Yeah.
He just didn't keep it upright.
Yeah, I know.
But he's got that level of talent and that level of speed. You don't end up in the MX1 class at 17 years of age.
No.
And he missed out on the championship that year.
Yeah.
To Luke Clout by like 3 points. So, mate, again, it's just another example of just the extreme level of talent that these guys have got. Now, something that talent won't fix.
I know where this is going.
Yep. We've already spoken about it. Catastrophic failure of the motorcycle.
Rest in peace.
I think we've already spoken about this.
A lot?
A lot. Probably too much.
Too much?
Yeah. Look, there was a lot of bikes that failed. It wasn't just the top dogs, but when 4 of the 6 top contenders' bikes fail, it really throws the championship up in the air.
Big time.
It could make or break the championship from a fan spectator experience. We're going to have a couple of riders now with fairly significant point leads, and this applies to both classes. So if one of those riders whose bikes failed, and I think they're all equally capable of it, gets on a tear, it could make for a fantastic championship experience. But I think the odds are now, and I hope it doesn't go this way, is that we're going to have a couple of riders that are way out in front, and then it's going to be a race for 2nd and 3rd in the championship.
Try and play catch up.
Look, I hope someone gets on a tear and it ends up being a close championship battle. But when you get riders the caliber of Dean Ferris, Aaron Tanti, Kyle Webster, Matt Moss, now being 20 plus points out of the title chase, in some cases more than that, I think it's going to be hard to come back from.
I think, like you stated before, it'd be a different scenario if we had more races in the series.
Yep.
Where it could make for better racing, better chance to catch up. But, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting anyway. I'm looking forward to Maitland.
I wonder if they'll have a dry track this year.
We've already seen it can be 40 degrees and bone dry, and we'll still end up with a mudder. So, speaking of mudders, Jed Beaton and Todd Waters. What a performance. The reason I raised those names is because I think they both said something interesting that it really had me thinking.
What's that?
So, over the weekend, the New York Supercross was on, and Max Anstey, privateer, racing for Yuriv Konski's Firepower Honda team, quasi-privateer, ended up with a victory in a complete and utter mutter. Now, speaking after the race, it was attributed to his British heritage. Maybe that's why he was so good in the mud. He did well at the Madeley Basin Motocross of Nations. So they're saying, it's because you grew up in England and you're used to riding mud. And he said, actually, no. Like, I've done most of my racing in the US. And yes, I did well in the mud there. And I did well in this mudder. And this was my first major Supercross victory. Mm-hmm. So they said, well, what do you attribute it to? And he said, my attitude. He said, I love racing in the mud. I enjoyed every moment of that race. There were clearly other riders who didn't enjoy every moment of that race.
Hating life.
Now, looking back at the Pro MX at Albury, I think there were a lot of riders, and we know from the comments that were made after the race, there were a lot of riders that were hating life. Aaron Tanti said he didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now, Jed Beaton, in his post-race interview, he was like the bird that got the worm. He couldn't stop smiling. He was happy. And he said, loved it out there.
What is wrong with him?
Yep. He made a really interesting comment there too when they said to him, is this because you've been over racing the
Europe?
Yep, MXGPs and racing in Europe where the tracks are wet and muddy. And he said, no, I think it's more the fact that I grew up racing in Tasmania and we used to race muddy tracks all the time there. So I thought that was interesting. But my point is that he enjoys racing in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
And Max Anstey said, it's all about attitude.
We even had a bit of a chat with Todd Waters.
Exactly. And so that was what I was going to touch on next. So in the morning, it was about 10:30. The MX1 boys hadn't been out yet. And we were standing in one of the spectator areas and Todd came and stood next to us. And I said sarcastically, it was pouring with rain at that stage. You must be looking forward to going out there. And completely non-sarcastically, he looked at us and said, yeah, why not? And I thought, my God, this guy's crazy.
Yep.
And sure enough, I mean, he ended up...
He killed it.
Yep, coming second place on the day.
Yeah.
Like, what a performance. And again, it comes down to attitude. If you're expecting to have a hard race and expecting to fall over and expecting to get covered in mud and not be able to see where you're going, and you can find a way to enjoy that somehow, apart from being batshit crazy, I think that's the key to success when it comes to riding in mud.
I'd like to know their secret to enjoying that.
I was amazed that they didn't reduce the length of the motos. But beyond that, doing that for 20 minutes, that is a caliber of human being.
Exhausting.
To come out of that with a smile on your face,
Yep.
that is...
From a different planet.
Yep, definitely a different planet. Another rider with a technique that's slightly from a different planet, last week's podcast guest, Corey Watts.
Rubber arms.
Yep. How were Corey's starts?
At first I didn't know what he was doing because, like, the gate would drop, everyone would take off, and then he'd just
Putt away from the line.
putt away. But it worked out well for him, though, didn't it?
It was amazing. Yep. It was like he was out for a Sunday ride and he missed the practice start and was just cruising off the line.
It worked out well in the end for him,
Yeah.
though.
Oh, it worked out amazingly well. It was a fantastic technique.
Let the gate drop, everyone get covered in mud off that big puddle off the start gate.
Wasn't even mud. It was just water. Like, it was blinding. It was, if you weren't in the first front row of riders, you couldn't see anything. And there is Corey, about 50 metres behind, just slowly pulling off the start line, putting away.
Riding past the carnage and all the people that have fallen over.
Yeah, passing probably 10 riders in the first corner, like literally, not even joking. Like, and Corey rode his way to a 15th place. Yeah, amazing effort. So,
as the saying goes, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, yep. And he looked great out there. And
He did.
And again, we spoke to him afterwards, and he wasn't hating life out there.
Yeah.
All comes down to attitude.
That's it. My attitude was pretty good because we weren't riding in it. It was good seeing other people ride in it.
Yeah.
For a change.
Like I said, I would have gone home. I seriously would have. There's no way. I mean, I hope I'm not coming across as a wimp, but that didn't look like fun to me. I think I need a bit of an attitude adjustment.
Especially if you're not used to riding in mud like that.
I think the next mud race we have, I'm just going to have to give it a crack and try to enjoy it, even if I have to paint the smile on my face.
I mean, yeah, that's all you can do at the end of the day, isn't it? And try and enjoy yourself and just get through the race in one piece.
I'm having a happy time.
Putt, 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 putt. I love this so much.
This is great. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So let's have a look at the top 10 results. Of course, in first place, Mr. Tasmania, not MXGP, Jed Beaton with 1-2 moto scores. He's going from strength to strength. Gets better every round.
Keep it up.
Yep. Todd Waters. Sure. Why not? In second place with 2-4 moto finishes. The two guys that loved being out there. Kurt Gibbs showed his experience. He rode solidly and consistently with 5-3 moto finishes to round out the podium in third. Hamish Harwood, one of our Kiwi visitors aboard the Davey Motorsports KTM, 3-6 moto finishes for fourth overall. Maximus Purvis, on the WBR Yamaha.
You can't say that with a straight face,
I
can
can't. I can't. I love you, Max. Please come on the podcast. Amazing rider. 6'8" for 5th overall, rounding out the top 5. All right, your number 1 pick, Dean Ferris.
Oof.
Yep, 6th overall
That hurt.
with a DNF in Moto 1 and a massive victory in Moto 2, continuing on from Appen.
A man possessed.
Yep. His speed in all kinds of gnarly, nasty conditions is just on a different level. That's a bit of a blow, though, to his championship. All right, in 7th place, Brett Metcalf. 710 moto scores. Yep, said it right that time. Mr. Super Fast, but a little bit sketchy. Regan Duffy, 8th overall with 10-11 moto finishes. That's awesome for Regan.
Yeah.
Especially in those conditions. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do now. He's getting a bit more confidence.
Yep.
Seems to be enjoying it. Yeah, I just love his attitude to racing at the moment. He seems to be having a bit of fun. He's all positive. I mean, when you've been through that sort of experience and you're back doing what you love, I think
Small steps back into it.
life is all positive though, isn't it?
Seems to find his groove.
Yep. Dylan Wood, 9th overall on the Ride Red Honda with 913 moto finishes. That's an awesome result for Dylan. And rounding out the top 10, Liam Jackson. He's an Oats MX rider representing the Mudgee Powersport Gas team with 814 moto results. Good effort to Liam. I got some cracking photos of him too. He had no goggles on, and you could see the intensity in his face.
Did anyone have goggles on?
Yeah, there were a few
Free riders
with goggles on. Yeah, Joel Evans. He had more mud in his helmet than goggles, but he still had his goggles on.
It was everywhere.
Yep. The gap between the bottom of his goggles and the front of his helmet was just absolutely
Packed full.
Oh, packed full of mud. It was amazing. I don't know how it wasn't covering his mouth. I've got photos of it, and not only that, his helmet must have weighed, 15 kilos. It was just insane. A couple of other notable mentions. Luke Clout. So he finished up 12th overall. Not what he would have wanted. Fried the clutch in the first moto. That's what really, really hurt him, and got 9th in the second moto. So rough day for Luke. Aaron Tanti didn't look bad in Moto 2. A DNF in first moto hurt him. Yeah, finished up with a 7th in Moto 2 for a 15th overall. And I almost forgot my man, Carl Webster. A 5th in the second moto, DNF in the first. Leaves Wodonga with 16 points.
Oof. Ouch.
Yeah. It was really a weekend of what could have been, but wasn't for a lot of these guys, wasn't it?
It's really shaken up the championship standings, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, massively. All right. MX2. What were your thoughts?
Brody Connolly was out there killing it.
The bag of spuds getting around in the mud.
Absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
He almost run us over on the by the finish line, come off the track.
Yep.
Close up look of him, didn't we?
Yeah, we definitely got a close up. I think the fence would have saved us. And
He was riding really good, very impressive.
yeah, he was. There wasn't a rider on the day that
no.
that didn't detour.
No.
There was a few shortcuts, a few roundabouts, a few cross-country expeditions.
It was some riders that stood out for you in MX2.
Definitely can't look past Brody Connolly. Yeah, he looked fantastic all day long. But the two, I think, that stood out for me, without a doubt, Caden Minier, 15 years old.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yep, to be riding in those conditions, to keep it all together, to show the level of maturity and patience that it takes to finish on the podium in those conditions, I think is really, really impressive. Every time I see this kid ride, and, for all intents and purposes, he's still a kid.
Yeah.
It just blows me away. He seems to be loving it out there, which is a big ingredient, I think, to success. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how he goes for the rest of the championship. I think he could be up there. He could definitely be a contender.
Mm-hmm. We'll see.
And the other one that stood out to me for a number of reasons, Nathan Crawford.
Right. Why's that?
Couple of things. Well, first of all, unfortunately, he DNF'd in Moto 1, which is not great to see. Accounts were that he was very angry about it and stormed off, leaving his bike stuck in the mud. But like at Appen, following an unfortunate disqualification in round one at Wodonga at Appin. He was a man possessed. And when he rides with a chip on his shoulder, he's just on a different level. And I think that's exactly what happened at Wodonga.
I was going to ask you about that. If you think he's more of an emotional rider, like when he's got that chip on his shoulder, he just comes out on fire.
Yep. Like his pass on Brodie Connolly, they came together very close.
Yep.
He was not going to be denied in Moto 2. I mentioned it in the previous podcast. The advantage that he has when he rides like that, I think, is his creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the younger riders could learn watching him because he does certain sections of each track, and we've seen it. We've seen it at Wodonga. We saw it at Appin, and now I saw it at Wodonga. It was even covered on the telecast, like through the rollers there's 5 rollers.
Yep.
And he was going double in and triple out, where every other rider was sort of just riding through them, skimming.
On that back section?
Yeah, on that back section. And I reckon he was making easily a second up through that section, maybe a second and a half on some of the other riders. It was just incredible. Like, he was hitting them so fast, and he was the only rider doing it out of MX2 and MX1 that I saw all day. I stood there for quite some time during both the MX1 and MX2 motos taking photos, and he's the only rider I saw doing that, and it was just light years faster.
He's definitely unique in his riding style and line choice.
It makes me wonder, like, what does he, when he looks at sections of the track, he obviously looks at them differently to everyone else. Like, other riders, I think, see what the other riders are doing, and automatically sort of that's what their expectation of themselves is. He must look at some of these sections, and I don't know what goes through his head, but like an artist at work, I guess, he looks at it differently to everyone else.
Sees different opportunities in track obstacles.
Yep. At Wodonga, he was doubling into the rollers in the third corner that no one else was, and again, making up a huge amount of time. That's typically a bit of a braking zone. It's sort of 3 rollers going into a corner, and people hit the first one and use the subsequent 2 rollers to wash off speed, and he was doubling in and making up heaps of speed. At Appin, it was the line choices.
That inside rut.
Yep, he was going in that inside rut, and
which most other riders were steering clear of.
Yep. And when I see these sort of things, it makes me wonder, like, why their teams aren't saying to the other riders, hey, look what he's doing. I don't know whether maybe the other riders can't do it. Like, maybe he's really good at those sort of things, and no one else is doing it. But like at Wodonga, we were watching him do that all day long. And once he started, it was just gaining him time. He was making passes, and no one else started doing it. No one else even tried it. Yeah, that's why he stood out to me.
Do you think he's going to be able to maintain that intensity if he doesn't have any problems in the upcoming rounds?
Well, now that he's had sort of 2 big setbacks in the first 3 rounds, I wouldn't be surprised if that chip on his shoulder is there for the entire season.
Yeah, I agree.
It's pretty unfortunate. It's a bit of bad luck. Again,
Was that a blown motor as well, or a clutch? Do we know?
Oh, I don't know, but it was a bike failure.
A bike stopped working.
Yeah, and it was 25 points down the Googler. That's a reason, if you're a racer and you have that winning mindset, that's going to leave you with
a hard hit.
Yeah, you're going to sour taste in your mouth, and it's going to make a championship an uphill battle for Crawford. It's an interesting thing we've seen so far this year. The 2 races, which I would say are arguably by far the fastest, in Dean Ferris and Crawford.
I've had the worst luck.
Yeah, there is a high potential now that they're not going to win the championship. Unfortunately, the history books only ever remember the guy really that came first. Before we go through the results for the MX2 class, what were your predictions?
MX2, number 1, Wilson! Todd. Nathan Crawford, 2nd. Brodie Connolly, 3rd place.
Again, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Hey, I'm liking these odds. What about yourself?
I had Todd, Connolly and Crawford as well, just in a different order.
Different mix-up.
But I did predict that Brodie Connolly would go 1-2 in his moto scores, and Brodie went 1-3. So that was pretty close.
Close enough. Just flip the numbers around and you're right.
Yeah.
You just changed your last podcast, can't you?
That's right. I'll go back and re-record it. Yep. That's actually not a bad idea. I could do that. Yeah. I'll make my prediction of who's going to win the championship after the championship's finished and put it back into the first podcast.
All the audio will be like, and I predict Wilson. Johnson on.
That sounds spot on like me, mate. That's a pretty
Yeah.
good impersonation.
You're welcome.
All right, so first on the day, Brody Connolly looking in the goods. I think like Jed Beaton, he's growing in confidence. It's his first win in the MX2 class in Australia.
Good on him.
Yep, and I think there's probably many more to go. Caden Minier, the 15-year-old teammate of Nathan Crawford, with 5-2 moto finishes. Strong weekend, coming second overall. And last year's reigning champion, Wilson Todd, another consistent performance aboard his factory Honda with 3.5 moto scores for third overall, rounding out the podium. In fourth, Caleb Barham aboard the factory Husqvarna. That's a good ride from Barham, 4.6, especially considering the conditions.
Solid.
Yep. In fifth, number 5, Alex Larwood on the Yamalube Yamaha, 8.4 moto scores. His teammate, Jace Cosford, great ride in Moto 1, coming second, 2.18 moto scores to finish 6th overall. 7th overall, Nathan Crawford, big blow, but his creativity has saved him, at least on the day, maybe in the championship. We'll see.
See what happens.
Yep. So he finished DNF in Moto 1 and first by a long shot in Moto 2.
Jeez.
Reese Budd, consistent weekend aboard his Serco Yamaha with 9.9 moto finishes for 8th overall. Liam Andrews, great finish for him aboard the Spectro Elliott Brothers Honda, 7.11 moto scores. And rounding out the top 10 aboard the Two Smoker, all the way from New Zealand, Hayden Smith aboard the Davey Motorsports KTM with 6.13 moto scores.
Nice work.
First event in Australia this year.
And he got thrown straight in the deep end.
Straight in the deep end. So notable mentions in this class. Cody Cooper, 12th overall. Probably not the weekend or the results that he would have wanted, but did it sound like he was having fun out there?
It's all about having fun in the mud, isn't it?
Well, he did say he struggled after certain tracks and certain conditions.
Yeah.
I think maybe this was one of them.
I think it was majority of people's not favourite track conditions.
Unless you're 15 years old and love playing in the mud. Hugh McKay, the Tasmanian, 14th overall, disqualified in Moto 2 for using illegal fuel. Apparently,
It's a big no-no.
Yep, the scent of avgas was mixed in with the smell of dying motors.
Accidentally.
Yeah, that is it for MX2. So we'll briefly touch on the MX3 because, again, it was another fantastic day of racing for these guys. And it really came down to the Byron Dennis and Jack Mather show. But there was a lot of other riders getting into the mix. And there's like 6 riders in this class, I think, that I wouldn't even make a prediction for these guys because you just don't know which of the 6
It changes from week to week.
And they're all so good. They're so competitive. When these guys hit MX2, if they all, presuming they all stay in Australia, the future of Aussie motocross is going to be unreal.
Do you know what the lap times were? Comparisons from MX3 to MX2?
I don't know. I haven't looked it up. They were definitely a little bit looser. There was a lot more falls in MX3. The lack of experience was a bit telling.
They were still flying though.
But the speed was there. Jack Mather came away with a victory over Byron Dennis. Liam Owens, who's just announced he's going to Europe to race over there for a 2-week stint, 3rd overall. Kai Woods, great result, 4th overall. And the other 2 riders, Jake Cannon, who romped his way to a Moto 1 victory, 5th overall. And Connor Towle, he's the one I wanted to mention. Not the weekend for him. He's up there. He's definitely got the speed. A double DNF.
Oof.
So he leaves Wodonga with no points.
That's brutal.
I think that's going to be hard to come back from as far as a championship goes. But he's got the speed. He's going to be mixing it up with these boys all the way to the end. So let's look at the championship implications. So after round 3 at Wodonga, we've got Jed Beaton leading the MX1 class with 87 points. He's 14 points ahead of Kirk Gibbs in second. Dean Ferris, despite the DNF, he's still in touch. He's just 17 points behind. Do you reckon he can make that up?
I'm going to say yeah. I think he will be able to.
The dominant way,
He's been riding in the last few rounds. Do you think he's got a fair chance too?
if he keeps it upright and doesn't have any bike failures,
Mm-hmm.
the speed he's shown, he could win every moto of every race. He's got that level of performance this year. He's shown that level of performance this year. Looking back at last year, this is about the time that Aaron Tanti started his streak, though. We had Gilman and Maitland with the opposite way around last year. He podium finishes in a moto win in Gilman, and he went 1-1 in Maitland. And we've got 3 races in Maitland this year. So Aaron Tanti could be the spoiler there. They may share the red plate again, or one of them may get it. But, Dean Ferris, wow. 4th in the championship, Todd Waters. Good for Todd. So he's in there. I bet he's hoping for a few more mud races.
I bet if he keeps riding like that.
Yeah. And surprise for me anyway, but probably not if you're a New Zealander. 5th overall in the championship, Hamish Harwood. I keep saying Hardwood. I'm a carpenter by trade. So 6th in the championship, Aaron Tanti, 28 points back.
Think he can work his way up to top 3?
Top 3, I think he could definitely do. I hate to say it. Like, he's a really likable guy. I enjoy watching him ride. Like I said, he's exciting to watch race. But I think 28 points, that's a big ask. That's a really big ask. If he gets on a tear, who knows? But I definitely think he's going to need some luck going his way as well. And the other one we'll mention, Kyle Webster, 44 points back.
Ooh.
Now, if I don't think Aaron Tanti can make up 28 points, unfortunately.
He's not going to make up 44.
44 points that's a lot.
You think at this point they're just going to try and go for moto wins anyways, despite the championship?
44 points is winning 2 races while your opponent DNFs 2 races.
No one else shows up.
Yeah. As much as I hate to say it. So therein begs the question, track conditions, they can make or break a championship.
So we've seen.
Yep. And as devastating as that might be for the riders, it has an equal impact on the excitement levels for spectators. And if a sport isn't getting spectators, it's not going to grow. So I think that really leads to an incentive now. You know, we've seen what the impacts can be. We've seen the impact on the championship where contenders are no longer contenders. I think they need to lift their game.
See what happens at Maitland.
Yep.
Hopefully it's a mint track, dry conditions, not ripped too deep.
Oh, it's doable. I mean, it's completely doable. Barring absolute catastrophe, barring 36 mil of rain the night before the event, every track should be mint.
We might get to see some genuine racing this year.
But I mean it, like,
yeah,
every track should be mint.
Yeah.
At this level, track prep should not be questionable.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, even at the regional level,
yeah,
track prep shouldn't be questionable. So it shouldn't be a factor. Each track should be prepped perfectly for on race day.
Food for thought.
Definitely food for thought. ProMX, get yourself a consultant.
And
you can make it happen. I don't have the knowledge. I know a few people who do.
You could make it happen.
Peter Boyle could make it happen.
There you go.
Yeah. Ross Beaton, he's a track builder.
Yeah.
So
no, there's plenty of people out there that could.
There's the Pro Tracks guys. You know, they've got a wealth of experience. There's so many track builders out there. And what would it mean? Going to 8 rounds, probably spending 3 or 4 days in advance to go there, look at the weather report, look at the track, and direct the track crew on what needs to be done. The end. 8 rounds, 4 days. That's 32 days you've got to pay someone, plus a bit of travel and accommodation and food to do a job. That could effectively really, really improve the championship, the viewership, the telecasts, the whole spectator and racer experience.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
It is.
Yeah, something I'd like to see. All right, MX2 Championship. Wilson Todd keeps his red plate.
Yay.
Fortunately, this one's a little bit closer, more closely contested. Only 8 points behind Brodie Connolly.
Ooh.
Could he get on a charge? Caden Minier, 20 points behind. Not too bad. Not too bad.
Feasible?
Yeah, he's making his way up. Nathan Crawford, definitely like Dean Ferris, probably the fastest guy in the MX2 class, 30 points behind.
That's a big gap.
Even when you're riding like a man possessed.
A man possessed like he is.
Yep.
Chip on shoulder.
That's a big ask. But I guess we'll see when all these riders hit the track at Maitland, if anything's going to change. Could there be a swing?
I think there's going to be a big swing.
Yeah? Yep. You think some of these riders that have the points deficit are going to be making a charge?
Absolutely.
Yep, making a
You
statement.
don't think Ferris and Crawford are going to hold back?
I was thinking they might not even show up. They're going to be sitting on the couch playing PlayStation.
Might as well. It might rain. We'll just sit at home.
They might leave the sprinklers on. Who knows?
That's happened before, hasn't it?
Has it? I don't know. You tell me.
Rumour has it.
Rumour has it. All right, finish the episode out with predictions for Maitland. Dry, hard-packed track.
Are you promising that?
That's what we're hoping for. Well, we've got a few rounds now that are traditionally more dry and harder, firmer tracks. So as Aaron Tanti said, this is what he loves. This is where he goes on a tear. He loves Maitland. All right, you go first. Who's your picks for Maitland?
I'm going to stick with the same as Albury. Dean Ferris, Aaron Tanti, Jed Beaton. Thoughts?
It's actually hard to make an argument against that. Dean Ferris, next level speed.
Machine.
Aaron Tanti, great at this track, looking for redemption. And Jed Beaton, he's on the up and up at the moment. He's growing with confidence. He's starting to gel with the Honda. How can you vote against it? The question for me in that group would still be Kyle Webster. I know we had that conversation last time.
Yeah. Are you going to change your pick?
No, I actually I tend to agree with your top three, but I think Kyle could play the spoiler in that group.
I think he'd be right behind them three.
I think he could be anywhere amongst those three. But if I had to place a bet at this point in time, and it feels almost stupid, like seeing the lead he got at Wodonga, it feels silly to not have him in the top three, just like Dean Ferris. He's got that raw speed. I can't see a reason why not to put him in the top three.
Mm-hmm. But we've seen him like that at Wonthaggi previous years, and he's crashed.
Yeah, where he makes the mistake. Top four?
Call it the top 15?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think you're onto it. MX2, who have you got?
I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Oh, I haven't even thought about it. No, I have. Nathan Crawford, there is no denying now that that chip on his shoulder is that's digging in all the way to the bone.
Yes. He's out for blood.
Watch out, Wilson Todd. He's coming for you. Brody Connolly, I think he's got the speed. He mentioned that he was struggling a little bit with stamina, but that's improving. I mean, he trains on the Beaton's Pro Formula program.
Yep.
There is no question that those guys are fit, that they work hard, that they train hard. The fact that he was able to sustain the pace, consistency that he did at Wodonga, I think there's no longer a question about his stamina. So I've got him in second. And in third place, I'm going to pick Caden Minier.
I was going to do the same.
Yep. For the reason being that I think he's got the pace.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
Yep. I think Wilson Todd's got the experience, but he's just been a tick off the pace. Last year, no one could touch him. This year, I think these younger guys, they're hungry and they've just got that raw speed.
Mm-hmm.
So barring any disaster, I'm going to put Minier in third. Crawford, Connolly, Minier.
I'm gonna have to agree, go Minier as well.
Yep.
But I'm going to be bold and say Wilson Todd instead of Connolly. So Crawford, Todd, Minier.
I can't believe you're counting out Brody Connolly.
He's going to be fourth.
I think he could be up there for a win.
We'll see.
Yep.
We shall see. Just writing notes so I remember this.
But this is probably why I'm no good at MX Fantasy. Oh, good. Well, I think that about covers everything.
Beautiful. Can I leave?
You know you're not allowed to leave. I'm locking you back in the basement for the next one.
I'm just happy you put some pants on for this episode.
How can you tell? They're under the table. I took them off about 15 minutes ago.
You answered the door.
In my dressing gown.
I didn't know that was podcast attire. Just your jocks in a T-shirt.
Oh, the scary thing is, it's kind of believable.
Is that why there's no other guests?
Hey. Before we stoop any lower, I'm wrapping this episode of the ProMX Breakdown up. Thanks to our guests for this episode, Cody Cooper and Aaron Tanti, as well as my co-host, Trav Coward. This one's been a lot of fun. As always, please support the sponsors who support us. Death Grip Products, Works Racing, and Wolf Building Compliance. And of course, a big thanks to all you people for listening. See ya.